Hey, good evening, everyone. The Lakeville Open Space Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 20th, 6:30 p.m. It's a remote meeting for a presentation from Rhino Capital regarding the Lakeville State Hospital redevelopment proposal introduction. And open space members attending are myself, Chairman David Zlomas. We have Liz Nash, Bob Wilson, Deborah Balajian, and Lynn Morley, and hopefully Joan Morton will be joining us shortly. She's trying to get on.
I'm in. I'm on the phone. I couldn't get in by Zoom.
All right, so we have six. We definitely have a quorum, and see, and LakeCAM is recording this meeting. Is anybody else recording the meeting?
No.
Okay, well, this open space committee meeting is called to order.
The Historical Commission needs to call to order also.
Okay, this is Brian Reynolds, Chairman of the Historical Commission. I'd like to call it to order.
I second.
And we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Would you like me to give attendance?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we have Brian Reynolds, Chairman, Joan Morton, who's doing double duty tonight, Vice Chair. We have Jerry Taylor, Treasurer, Delia Murphy, Member, and myself, Secretary, Nancy LaFave.
I'm sorry, there has to be a roll call, and the members need to say they're here. Same goes with open space due to this being remote only. Sorry.
I can't hear you.
There has to be a roll call.
The roll call? Okay.
Roll call of the members. Same goes
Saying
with
aye.
open space.
Okay. Brian Reynolds,
Aye.
Joan Morton,
Aye.
Jerry Taylor,
Aye.
Delia Murphy,
Aye.
Nancy LaFave, aye.
Dave, do you want to start? We'll just do the roll call for the Open Space Committee.
Okay, roll call for Open Space Committee. Liz Nash.
Aye.
And of course, David Zlomas, aye. Bob Wilson.
Aye.
Joan Morton.
Aye.
Deborah Balajian.
Aye.
Lynn Morley.
Aye.
And apparently Brian Reynolds also.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take it over from here if you'd like. Unless anyone has a specific any other agenda items they'd like to go over before we give our presentation. I think we're the main act of the evening. So happy to jump in if that makes the most sense.
For open space, I can say yes, we're ready.
Historical Commission is ready.
Great. Well, I am going to pull up a presentation that we have prepared here this evening. And just a second. Can everyone see my screen there?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you all joining here this evening in this dual committee fashion. We do appreciate you taking the time. For the record, my name is John O'Leary. I'm with Rhino Capital Advisors here this evening. I also am joined by Sam Randall, also from Rhino. So we, as I think many of you or all of you are aware, Rhino Capital is the current owner of the former Lakeville State Hospital property. To set the stage a little bit, we have begun our permitting effort at the local and state level for the proposed redevelopment or master plan redevelopment here on this property. Our project is sort of split into three main components, which I can get into as we get in. But before we dive into that, just wanted to, like I said, talk through today's agenda. So again, John O'Leary with Rhino Capital. I'll walk through sort of project details in a few slides. And then just regarding sort of the goal for this evening, one, I think we wanted to introduce this project. This project does incorporate a substantial amount of open space that we're proposing. In addition to that, there is community benefits, which we'll get into as well, public open space that'll be available to all residents. In an effort to bring these spaces to fruition, we have also reached out to the town's, Sam, correct me on the name, the community,
It's the Community Preservation Committee, which was newly formed in 2022.
The Community Preservation Committee is the ruling or governing body for the Community Preservation Act. The community, a little bit of an echo here. Jose, would you mind muting that phone? Thank you. So as I was saying, the Community Preservation Act was an act enacted by the state. I want to say in early 2000. The town of Lakeville voted in Community Preservation Act in 2022. The Community Preservation Act is essentially a small allocation, 1% allocation of property taxes that goes into a larger fund that then get allocated towards specific benefits to the town, such as open space, public amenities such as this. So we anticipate speaking and being in front of that board in the coming weeks, but ahead of that, wanted to get in front of you all and involve you all, hear your thoughts on what we're proposing and get your feedback, and ideally a letter of support once we obviously address some of your comments and incorporate what both of your boards would like to see. We have some ideas that we want to present to you, but again, want to hear your feedback, wanted to present this project to you all. So getting into it a little, So getting into it a little bit, I think most folks in the town of Lakeville are aware of this property, but to set the stage, the Lakeville State Hospital is located at 43 Main Street. It's just about a half mile up the road from the interchange of 495 and Route 105. Was initially about a 80 acre property that covered from the intersection of 79 and Main Street all the way over to what is now that eastern bank and runs north-south there on the plan you see in front of you. As it exists today, the property is roughly 49 acres, a little over 49 acres, with frontage along Rhode Island Road as well as Main Street. In its current condition, the property is improved by 7 structures, all in varying states of disrepair. The hospital was operational from 1910 to 1992, before being abandoned by the state. Multiple redevelopments have attempted to occur on this property, and unfortunately all unsuccessful. What we're presenting to you and to several different boards in the town and to the residents is a plan, a mixed residential plan that we feel makes a lot of sense, fits the mold, and also meets a lot of the needs at both the local and state level from a housing perspective. In the rear of the property, I'll just touch on quickly, in the rear of the property, that sort of green blob that you see at the top of your screen, that represents the approximate extent of an existing landfill. It's our intention to completely remediate and remove that landfill. We do have some very minor wetland impacts, direct wetland impacts as part of this effort. Those direct wetland impacts are confined exclusively to the removal and remediation of that wetland. It's about 500 or so square feet of that landfill that the wetland has creeped into the bounds of that landfill. So that is the only direct wetland impact that we have, but just wanted to put into context one of the improvements that we've committed to make here at this property. So, getting into our proposed condition. So moving sort of page south north here. I know there's a lot to digest, but I'm going to take my time, try to walk through. If there are any questions, feel free to interrupt it as I work through this. But moving page south to north, bottom of the page, closest to Main Street, we have an independent living property. This is it's a 3-story, 70-unit building that will be accompanied by a assisted living and memory care building. Similarly, 3 stories. That building is a total of 120 beds. As you move further north, the next property you come across is a multifamily building. This will be permitted through Chapter 40. I should say, sorry, the senior living down in the southern portion of the property, that will be permitted and is currently under review by the planning board for site plan review. Again, as you move north, you come to the multifamily housing building. This building is a 5-story building proposed with 200 total units. This building is going to be reviewed by the ZBA as part of the comprehensive permit process. That process is expected to begin in September, is our expected first meeting there. As you continue to move north, you come across our cottages. This is an active adult community. It's a 55 and over community. It's a total of 68 units in duplex and triplex units. I think, it's a total of 68 units in duplex and triplexes. It's single-story buildings, all 2 beds, single-car garages as well. At the very top of the building, at the top of the property, we have a wastewater treatment plant. There'll be a private wastewater treatment plant that will service the entirety of the master planned community. As I mentioned earlier, and we'll get into, actually, why don't we just jump to the next slide? So as part of this development, one sort of key factor that came to be was we really wanted to involve the community throughout the design and some of the early stages of the design. We held 2 community engagement meetings, one in December of last year, and then again one in June. We had a draft plan. We opened up the floor. We had a sort of an open house style meeting. We had almost 100 folks come through, over 100 actually, if you combine both meetings, and provide feedback to our design professionals. We had our landscape architect, our civil engineer. Sam and I were in attendance. Our operator for the senior living portion of the development. We had our whole slew of our project team. One of the most common pieces of feedback that we received was really to incorporate some element of public benefit, some area of this property that could be accessible to the public. And actually, one of the most common themes we heard was dog park. We heard that over and over and over from folks. So to kind of meet both of those requests, we have incorporated or proposed 2 dog parks. Item number 1, or highlight number 1, which you can see up at the northern portion of the page, we have a small dog park that exists, or that we're proposing just north of the wastewater treatment plant, just off the main entrance off Rhode Island Road. In addition to that, we're also proposing a dog park at the opposite end of the plan, highlighted under number 3 here at the bottom of the page. That is just off the entry point of the 40B. Both of those amenities are intended to be open to the public. What you see highlighted in number 2 is a public walking trail. This walking trail runs along the edge of the wetland area that exists on this northeastern portion of the property, which you can see highlighted as number 4. It's really kind of a pretty expansive area. It covers almost a third of the overall property. It runs that whole dense green area. That area will, as I mentioned, remain untouched with the exception of some small remediation that will have to occur in the wetland area. But beyond that, we have no direct wetland impacts. We have no work beyond grading and some stormwater basins being created inside even the 100-foot buffer. We have no impervious area within the 100-foot buffer zone. But that walking trail is something that we felt was really important. It ties the site from Rhode Island Road down to Main Street. It's accessible via sidewalk from both of the dog parks, and we believe to be what could be a great public benefit and a public amenity to the residents in the town of Lakeville, as well as those that would benefit or those that would live on this proposed redevelopment. So getting into it a little bit more. So the public walking trail that we're proposing will be a stone dust material. So it's intended to have an aggregate which bonds and then a stone dust over the top. It's actually very similar to the picture that you see in the bottom left corner here. It is a pervious surface, so water will permeate through it. It is not a paved asphalt surface. It's intended to sort of naturally follow the track along the wetland buffer zone. We intend to incorporate benches. And in addition, we also want to really honor the history of this property. This property has a long history, almost a century here in the town of Lakeville. And although we'll be removing it and demolishing the existing structures, we certainly don't want to erase the property from Lakeville's history. So one thing that we're looking for support and guidance really from the Historical Commission is we want to incorporate some placards like you see in the top left here that will be positioned sort of, a handful of areas throughout the walking trail and are really intended to sort of tell the story of the Lakeville State Hospital. So we would need support from the Historical Commission on the contents and what would be included in there. Would love to hear feedback on the type of material or if people have old images. Again, we want to make sure that we're honoring that piece and that we're educating folks who might be new to Lakeville living in some of these residences, understand the history that exists on the property. So 2 dog parks, just quick hit here, pretty standard dog park area. The one in the north is about 2,200 square feet proposed. The one in the south is about 4,400 square feet proposed. Our landscape architect has designed these such that they incorporate a AstroTurf material, so a little bit more upfront cost, but they are more durable, more long-lasting, will sort of keep their color, and we feel to be the best product. Again, durability was an important factor for us here, and low maintenance was also an important factor here. So that's what we've considered, and that's dog parks. They will be fenced in. They will incorporate a fence as well. Some benches and a couple other designs sort of to be determined. But your standard dog park is what we're thinking there. Just touching on a couple of things that our landscape architect has really sort of empowered us to include as part of this master plan. So as you saw, open space is a huge component of this sort of redesign. Across the 3 developments, I have the stat here in front of me. If you include the wetland area, like I mentioned, there's 49.5 acres of property. If you include the wetland area, our proposal has a little over 32 acres of green space. If you exclude the wetland area, it's about 24 acres of open space and green space. We're really proud of that. We think that that's a really important element of this project. It not only is it a benefit to the residents, but we believe it also it's an overall benefit to the property. So just wanted to provide a couple of representative images. This street experience is going to be really important, especially in the cottages development. On the northern portion, we believe that entry experience into the property will be really important, and driving up that road and incorporating a more of a rural street experience is going to be really important. This touches a little bit on sort of the public walking trail. Again, representative images that our landscape architect has pulled and has kept in mind as we're designing some of this. I think the important piece for this one that I wanted to touch on, that it really was, I can't take much credit here. This is really our landscape architect, but in terms of what we're planting and what we're intending to include in this master plan development, is a very diverse landscape package. It will include a lot of native species. It'll include a lot of color, with the intention of blooming seasons and, in the spring, fall, and really try to diversify the landscape palette on this property. That's something that we've challenged our landscape architect with, and we believe he's done a phenomenal job. And then again, just kind of some representative images. We have a very large sort of campus green area that sits in the middle of our cottage development. We really want to incorporate sort of native species, as I mentioned, pollinators. Our stormwater basins will be landscaped to mimic more of a rain garden type of design. So, we really do want to make sure that the landscape feels very natural, feels very, is an important piece of what we're working on. So just quickly, project schedule. So as I mentioned, we are in front of both the planning board right now, the Conservation Commission right now, we're under review. And we are also expecting to be in front of the ZBA within the next, call it 6 weeks. So that's sort of where we are. We anticipate, our presence in front of the boards, our approval process and permitting process to continue through the fall and likely through the winter and potentially into next year. Hopefully by the end of this year, we are in a pretty good place, but, we're certainly expecting to have a bit of runway here. But that's sort of where we currently stand, in our permitting process. So that wraps it up. I know that was a lot of information. Happy to Sam and I are here, for you all. We're here to answer questions and talk through anything you all might have. But we're looking forward to working with you all and consider this sort of the start of this process. And like I said, we're here for you. So I will stop talking and turn the mic over.
John, I have a question. So on the, you said the wetlands were going to be directly impacted. How much of the wetland is being removed?
So it's about a 500 square foot area. Let me go back to the slide number 2. So the landfill that was previously serving the hospital property exists in sort of that green blob that you see on the northern portion of the property. There's a very small sliver of that landfill where the wetland has actually encroached into that landfill. So we're committed to removing and remediating that landfill in its entirety. And as a result, there's a small portion of direct wetland impact that is actually within that extent of the landfill. So we'll be removing that. We'll be replicating that landfill and rebuilding that. Actually, I think we're proposing a 1 to 1.5. So we'll be putting back about 750 square feet of wetland area in that area as part of that effort.
Have you gotten feedback from the Conservation Commission on that?
We had our first hearing in end of July, I want to say. We've sort of threw everything out there, same way I sort of am with you all here. They had requested us to increase. We had initially a 1-to-1 replication. They've requested an increase, which is where I get to that 1 to 1.5. That project is, or that portion of the project is currently going through peer review. They have hired a third-party peer reviewer, and that peer review effort is expected to kick off in the next few weeks. So we're very much in the process. And we had a strong first hearing and are looking forward to continue working with them.
Thank you. have another question on the public walking trail. And realistically, is it mostly going to be the residents that would use that, or do you see there's good access to the general public? Is there parking, sidewalks to get to it? Well,
Yeah, so we are proposing a sidewalk that will tie into the existing sidewalk along Main Street. There is no sidewalk along Rhode Island Road, so we won't have any direct sidewalk connection to public rights of way along that northern portion along Rhode Island Road. As part of the dog parks, we are incorporating 4 parking spaces at both locations. So public access will be available via those parking spaces. And then there's a crosswalk, and you can actually, let me pull it up here. There's a crosswalk from those dog parks that heads right into that walking trail. And that's what we're proposing to date. We do believe it would be used by the public. I mean, I can't say definitively if it will or if it won't, but we certainly feel like, you know, that was our intent, to have this be sort of an area that the public is available and welcome to come and utilize.
and the walking trail material is, who maintains the trail?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that it's continually a bit of a moving target. That said, what our expectation is that the public walking trail will be, included within the ownership of these sort of 3 different developments. We consider sort of these developments as almost a part of an HOA, to put it sort of simply. And those 3 developments would share in the maintenance and upkeep, is how we're thinking about it right now.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask a couple questions? I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
running right off of what you just said. So does Rhino builds it and then lets go?
So
Yeah.
yes, effectively. And I should say what let go is the walking trail would still be maintained and operated by these 3 developments that are included here. Though the final ownership of those 3, I don't have the crystal ball to say Rhino's going to own and operate all 3 of these in perpetuity. But the maintenance of the walking trail, as we've considered it to date, is that these 3 developments, the cottages, the multifamily housing, and the senior living, would be responsible for shared maintenance of that walking trail.
And the dog park?
And the dog parks as well.
Okay. So I'm sorry if you could talk me through it, because it's not really my, not something I'm used to, but so Rhino builds it, Rhino owns it until Rhino sells it?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the 40B, not that this has anything to do with open space, it's just a question. Is this 40B being designed to be in perpetuity?
That's correct. That's a requirement. That's a requirement of Chapter 40B.
Not necessarily, apparently. So that's why I'm asking the question. So this particular 40B will be in perpetuity, though. So that's pretty cool.
Liz, sorry, Sam Randall for the record, also with
Yeah.
Rhino.
Yeah.
Are you referring specifically to the income restricted units, or which portion of it?
Specifically to the income restricted units, yes.
So typically those are deed restricted for, I've seen like 30 years as an initial timeline, and then they're extended.
Right.
So, I mean, it all count, that entire building will count toward Lakeville's affordable housing like inventory.
For 30 years.
For
Or
30 years. And then they typically, I mean, there's a very significant process to get those like removed as affordable units, and that would not be the intention. I mean, that's just how the statute has it now, is that it's 30 years and then they're extended beyond that for say another 30 years. That's how I've seen it handled.
Okay, so I think that will come up again, I suspect. I just have lots of questions, I'm sorry. That's what this is for, right?
Yes.
So, as with the, I was actually, had heard a lot previously when this was going to be a different kind of development by Rhino. And you were extraordinary about the native species, just extraordinary, above and beyond. I do want to give Rhino a nod for that. So you're speaking again about putting in native species, which is awesome, but you're also talking about color palettes. So you said a lot of native species. I just want myself, I hope that you folks are thinking very carefully about perhaps only native species and definitely avoiding invasive species, especially in this area. So, just hoping.
Yeah.
I have a
I'll
question
just-
too about that, and it has to do with the landscape design person, Nancy LaFave. The design plan for the species that is going to be introduced when the walking trail is put in and everything, are they going to be native species or are they going to be alien species is one of the things that I have a concern about. And that falls into the pollinator thing too.
Yeah, the expectation is that they are all native species. Liz, it sounds like you were tied in when we were previously in front of you all with a very different development. The landscape architect that you heard from throughout that process, a gentleman by the name of Bill Madden from Greg Lombardi Design. Bill is still involved in the project. He's the same landscape architect that you heard previously, and is the same landscape architect that has put together what you see here in front of you. We've tasked Bill with the same direction for what we heard or what we presented to you all back in 2020, 2021. So the intention is, and we've charged Bill with really, continuing that commitment through to this development. I would encourage you to, take a listen to our, I think our next Conservation Commission hearing. We intend to have Bill, or if not our planning board hearing, we intend to have Bill in attendance to really talk through in detail on our landscape architecture piece. And happy to invite Bill to a meeting with you all here.
Oh, good.
I actually have two more questions.
Fire away.
The dog parks. This is silly, but I've heard that they also design them usually with an area for larger dogs and an area for smaller dogs. So that just really helps with, managing those. I thought I had another question. Nancy, I was wondering if you guys had any questions about the placards and the historical information that they're hoping to include. I didn't know, is that a state thing or is that the town has a desire?
We have a lot of documented information about the history of this site, the original house that was here and things like that. So there's a lot of access material that's available.
Nancy, we'd love
Kind of a short and simple answer, but
yeah, no, we'd love to work with your commission on sort of drafting those placards and kind of putting together that material so that we are able to honor the history that exists on this property. I think that's an important piece for us, and hopefully hopefully the historical commission as well. So as we I don't think we don't need to design them tonight, but as we continue through this process, we'd love to work with your commission to kind of draft those materials.
This is David Lawrence. I just have another general question on the how was the traffic impact study results and
So the traffic impact is all included in the planning board filing. That's being peer reviewed, and in addition is also being reviewed by Mass DOT as part of our state permitting process.
it's still in review?
That's correct. Yep.
Hello, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did I hear that you said there is going to be HOA fees for those communities?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the HOA department for that community would be responsible for maintaining the sidewalks, the greenway, and the dog parks, most likely.
That's how we've considered it to date.
Right.
I will admit it's still a moving target. We're very much in the process of kind of fleshing out a lot of those details, but to date, that's how we've considered it.
That's great, because I've seen so many areas built and then weeds or overgrowth, vegetation overgrowth, litter, and it's not maintained. And my major concern is that it stays clean and well maintained, and litter is not one of the issues at that site.
Absolutely.
And you guys have done a great job. I love your legend, your maps and drawings. It's really been very helpful.
Well, I appreciate that.
I have
Thank
another,
you.
I have a question, Nancy LaFave. If people are coming to use the walking trail, is there going to be designated parking for them or is it kind of geared more to the people who are going to be living in this area?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 parking spaces allocated or dedicated to the dog parks. Each dog park has 4 parking spaces dedicated to it. That's what we've considered to date. We feel it to be sufficient. However, if there's a need, we would consider revising that, but that's what we've allocated thus far.
How about the clubhouse? Will that attract, is that just for residents or is that open to the public?
Yeah,
for
so
events?
yeah, let me pull that up so everyone knows. So Jerry, I assume you're referring to that clubhouse sort of it's on a page center here.
Yes.
Yeah, so that clubhouse will be exclusive use to the residents within the active adult community within that cottage community.
Okay. I think it's great plan.
I'm sorry, Liz Nash, I have another question. Is there any, and this is maybe just my own ignorance, once it's built with the wetlands, et cetera, and the walking trail, dog parks being an astroturf aren't really a part of this, is there any sort of, I don't want to say conservation restriction, but I want to say something where it doesn't get paved over in the future. It remains like this, something that talk about deed restrictions, right? That stays within this, whether Rhino gets rid of it or not, sells it or not gets rid of it, but the ownership changes. Is there something to prevent that from being changed?
Yes, is the short answer. And it's certainly something that we're open to, is doing some sort of conservation restriction on that portion of the wetland. In fact, Sam and I were very briefly talking about it earlier this morning. It's something that we're open to. We'd have to I think we'd have to work closely with the town to understand what that restriction looked like, and what the language was around it. But yes, it's certainly something that we're open to.
Thank you. Because, I mean, if you're going to work this hard at this, we should really try to maintain it into the future. Would be a very good idea.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
I have another question. How will this affect the water in this area? I know we have Clear Pond on one side, everyone has wells. Will it affect our quality and quantity of water?
No, it really shouldn't. So the water, all domestic water and fire protection water, there are no wells that we're proposing at this time on this property. All of the water will be serviced off water mains that exist along Main Street and Rhode Island Road. So there should be no effect to any well water capacity. As it relates to quality, we don't anticipate or don't expect any impact at all to water quality. This is the site design, civil engineering that has gone into the plan you see in front of you is extensive and will continue to go through an extensive peer review process to ensure that there is no impact to any well water or water quality in proximity or really anywhere.
Thank you.
So the question is, where are the wells going to be? That are going to support these large buildings and all these single cottages.
So there will be no wells proposed on this property as the plan currently stands. The water will be serviced via Taunton water off water mains that exist in Rhode Island Road as well as Main Street.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get back to the walking trails for a moment. I would look at these walking trails as a shared asset for the town residents. And as such, I would see myself driving there and parking my car. But if you only have 4 spaces for the dog parks, are you planning parking spaces for people to be able to access the walking trails?
So one of the other, when I identified this as a potential challenge, being 4 spaces at either dog park as potentially not sufficient. So the other thing that we're considering is, I'm not sure, let me see if I can find it better. It's not quite zoomed in, but the multifamily housing page south has a pretty substantially large amount of parking, as you can see in this plan. One thing that we've considered, or an option that we've considered, is actually restricting a handful of those spaces to be for public access and public parking with close proximity or direct access straight to that walking trail. So effectively acting as almost an overflow parking area. So that's something that we've considered to potentially address a lack of parking or a concern over a lack of parking.
Would people be allowed to park on the road, the main road?
Along
105?
Along Main Street, I don't believe there is parking allowed along Main Street that I'm aware of.
Remember?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if perhaps parking it, again, I can't encourage you, but there's a CVS up the road. You walk on the sidewalk and head in. I don't think that's, again, probably off the record going to tell you that, but again, we hear the concern over the potential lack of parking, and we'll explore the option of potentially, restricting or reserving some spaces within the multifamily housing for access to that walking trail.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, do we have a projection of about how many persons will be in that whole area when it's all completed? What the census would be?
I don't have a total head count. I do have a total unit count. We're proposing 458 total units across the 3 different developments. So it's 68 for sale cottages, 200 multifamily units, and then 190 units within the senior living campus. And that 190 is 120 of assisted living, and then 70 of independent living. The senior living will have some support staff and employees, probably a heavier employee count than any of the other two developments. So there's certainly a count for some, to that head count overall number, but I don't have a definitive or wouldn't feel comfortable sharing a definitive head count with you.
This is kind of an not unusual, it's a different question. Liz Nash again. How long is the walking trail?
That is a good question, Liz. Hold on. I pulled it up today. It is it's 1,900 linear feet. So it's approximately 1,900 linear feet, which is just under a third of a mile.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So unless there are any other questions, I mean, that kind of wraps up our presentation to you all. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody wanted to go over or wanted to ask. Sam, I don't know if you had anything to add here, but we appreciate your time this evening.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think the Open Space Committee we'll take this up at our next meeting as an agenda item just to discuss, and after we had some time to think about it and see if we have any other suggestions we can offer. But definitely appreciate the opportunity to take a look at your proposal. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. As discussed at the opening, we do plan to be in front of the Community Preservation Committee in the coming weeks. So we'll mention that we had this discussion and reference it to them. It was a suggestion of the Community Preservation Committee for us to speak with you all and to present this and get in front of you. So as we continue through that process, we'll work simultaneously with you all to incorporate your feedback and work towards what we hope to be an awesome product. Yeah.
The Historical Commission will be meeting on Thursday night, and this is part of our agenda discussion. Follow up.
And I think Open Space is meeting, it's the first Thursday in September, so it's a week and a half, 2 weeks away.
That's the 5th.
Is there any need for Sam or myself to be in attendance to potentially answer those questions, or would it make more sense for you all to collect your thoughts with your boards and commissions and then get back to us with some feedback and suggestions? We're at your disposal, so let us know what makes sense for you all, and we're happy to work around that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you've given us plenty of information. I think we should think about it and discuss it as a committee and get back to you with anything we come up with.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, we appreciate your time and we look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thank you. And we need to adjourn our meeting. So Open Space Committee, to have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make them. I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Yeah, I think you have to do a roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Yeah, roll call vote. David Zalonis, aye for adjourning.
Liz Nash, aye. Yep, aye.
Bob Wilson.
Where's Brian? Over here, Brian's.
I don't see Bob.
Bob, you there? You got it.
Lynn Morley, aye.
Okay.
Ebony Boyage and I.
And is Joan still on?
Joan and Brian are muted. Okay.
No, right.
Joan,
Aye.
Brian's still muted.
Brian?
That's Shall we assume that he
I think it's a safe.
right?
Brian, can you hear me? Joan is co-chair. Would you entertain a motion for us to, the Historical Commission to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn Historical Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
We have to do a roll call vote.
Nancy,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Delia,
Aye.
Joan, I.
Let's see, Brian. Okay. we
Thank
are-
you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for the
everyone.
Thank you.
information.
All right,
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
all.